Good morning, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. You are all in for a really incredible treat this morning, and you'll be very glad you came today. Um, it's,
I hate when you say that.
yes, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Kirk Sinclair. Kirk contacted me, well, it's been about 18 months ago now, I suppose, and with an email to me saying that he would like to help me with my research. And of course, getting these kinds of emails, I was a little skeptical and thought, well, I don't know exactly what he means by that. I'm not sure who this person is. But let me set up a call with you and let's talk about what your ideas are. So we had a phone call and Kirk kind of explained to me his vision and really the passion that he has for bringing attention to the role for physical activity and other lifestyle and non-pharmacologic types of interventions and to really improve brain health as people get older. And he had really ambitions to promote this through a blog that he has. He's known as the Humanity Hiker, and he has a website called humanityhiker.com where he chronicles his long-distance treks. He is a long-distance hiker and has hiked the 3 major scenic trails in the United States, along with his wife Cindy, who's here with us as well. And so Kirk is a very talented individual. He has a PhD in natural resources and worked as a GIS manager for a watershed organization, but really that's just the backdrop for his other talents related to music and artistry and photography and his passion for hiking. So today he's going to be really sharing with us his journeys and talking to us about his perspective on humanity and kindness and community as well. And you all are really going to enjoy it. So I just encourage you to sit back and take it in. I'm going to turn it over to you, Kirk.
Well, that was great. Thank you, Carson. You read it just like I scripted it. I'm really glad to be here. This is sort of a thank you to Carson for listening to me and then embracing me and the sort of the stuff I've done to try to help raise funds and awareness for brain health and quality of life factors. And what I want to do as a thank you, what I will do as a thank you today is share with you some of our American Discovery Trail journeys. You see my shirt right here? Actually, that's not one of the big 3, that's not one of the scenic trails that you get the Triple Crown for. It's actually an even longer trail that goes from, well, it's written from east to west. The guide is written from east to west, starting nearby Cape Henlopen, Delaware, goes through College Park, and ends up at Point Reyes above San Francisco. That's the way that almost everyone has done it. Cindy and I are actually the first people to continuously do it west to east, starting at Point Reyes and coming home. Because we live in Connecticut, and so actually once we got to Cape Henlopen in Delaware, we hung a left and walked up to Norfolk, Connecticut, where we finished that particular hike. It was over 5,000 miles, and it was 366 days. We did it in a leap year because we needed an extra day. So what I will do in this for today is I'm going to start off with a movement from a symphony I'm composing, and the idea when the symphony is all done is to raise funds and awareness for brain health research. But it's a painstaking progress, and I only have one movement ready for you. So it's about the beauty that you discover along the American Discovery Trail. I actually think this trail is very well named. You discover America in all its facets, its culture, its beauty, what have you. Then after that one music piece, I will show slides that goes chronologically of us across the country. And while those slides are showing, I will tell 3 or 4 stories about kindness and community across the country, because that's sort of my wheelhouse. That's what I really emphasize in these long distance journeys is the better side of humanity that you see and what communities are doing for their own and the kindness that you witness all across the country when you do something like this. And then it's opened up to whatever questions that you want to ask about the journey, because there's more to discover than beauty and kindness, for that matter. A lot of things going on across the country. So I will start with this first movement to give you a little. I think it will be pretty evident as you start watching it. But what it is, it's the beautiful landscapes from all across the country, but compressed into a theoretical day, starting with sunrise and ending at sunset. And so the slides and the music is to convey the journey of a day. Though we didn't really do the whole country in one day, but you'll get the idea. Last minute sound check. Is this sounding okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
And after a couple of nights spent in the noisy city, here we are out in the quiet country.
Okay, that was a little.
Where do we start?
Yeah, that's the thing about these things. You look at it and say, "Oh, I'm ready to go," but there is a downside to long distance hiking. But I'm not going to tell you about any of the downside. I'll let you find out for yourself someday. Oh, I guess I should turn this on. What I will do now is I'm going to just put these on like a slideshow. Oh, before I do that, I just can't work under these conditions.
Sorry, Kirk, you're going to have to be patient with my technical difficulties. All right, so now you're all set. So,
I got it. Oops.
just click on it. There you go.
All right, these are in chronological order. This is Point Reyes above San Francisco, which we never really got to see because there's like 40 degrees and horizontal rain and all fog. And so that was what our first day looked like. Well, it cleared up towards afternoon, but I'm not going to talk about all that right now. There's plenty of time for questions and what have you, but what I'd like to do is I really would like to share a few stories with you about the kindness and community that you find when you go on long distance travels, and really is in existence. The thing is, we don't always look for it, or we don't always believe it. You know, whether we're listening to modern economists or enlightened philosophers, or just mass media, we get somewhat of a negative view of ourselves. And I believe in the virtues of being uncivilized. And when in the conditions that we see people in, when we're just walking across the country, we see people in a more leisurely mode, which isn't too common in today's society. And really the best tends to come out. So let me share with you a few stories. And granted, we look for it. It's like anything. You look for trouble, you're going to find trouble. But if you look for kindness, you're going to find it. Like we did with a young boy named Ethan Rose. Carson's already heard this story, so I might as well start off with this one. A boy that we encountered in Lamar, Indiana. Anyone ever heard of Lamar, Indiana?
Yep.
Really? You must be from Indiana.
I am.
Okay. All right. Because Lamar, Indiana is, I don't know, a few hundred people, maybe 500 or something like that. And so in order to watch a big city baseball game, they have to go to Cincinnati, Ohio. And Ethan Rose is 10 years old when I met him. And that summer, a few months before I met him, he went to his very first baseball game in Cincinnati, Ohio. And since it's a few hours away from Lamar, Indiana, the plan for the family was to go to the baseball game and then afterwards stay at a hotel in Cincinnati and then drive home again the next day. So that's what they did. But on the ride from the baseball game to the hotel, Ethan saw his first homeless person. He's from Lamar, Indiana, a small town boy. And this was a total shock to Ethan. I mean, people aren't supposed to be homeless. I mean, at least that's what a 10-year-old boy thinks. No one's supposed to be homeless. If you ask a 10-year-old boy anyways. And this deeply affected him. He went back to the hotel, and I was interviewing people across the country when I saw a good story, and I interviewed both Ethan's mom and I interviewed Ethan, and they tell a little bit different stories. His mom said that when they got back to the hotel, Ethan cried for an hour because of seeing this homeless person. Ethan says, I shed a couple tears. But in any case, Ethan did not let it stop there. When he got back home to Lamar, Indiana, First thing he did was he approached the pastor of his church and said, "We got to adopt a homeless shelter." And so they did. In Evansville, Indiana, they adopted a homeless shelter and started raising money and what have you, clothes. But that wasn't good enough for Ethan. So he started going on this letter writing campaign, contacting churches, community organizations, what have you, in the name of the Children's Crusade for the Homeless, as if he was his own, 501(c)(3), He's just writing all, and his pastor didn't even know about this. He's just writing all these letters out to these organizations saying, "Join the Children's Crusade for the Homeless." And within 2 months, Ethan raised $5,000 for that homeless shelter in Evansville, Indiana. And this is because at 10 years old, he didn't know any better, huh? First, he didn't know any better that, there's supposed to be homeless people. He didn't know any better. As far as he's concerned, there's not supposed to be any homeless people. And he didn't know any better that he couldn't do anything about it as a 10-year-old boy. So that's one of the most inspiring stories I encountered along the journey. The most inspiring quote from the journey was when we came into Leadville, Colorado. And we often would check out food pantries or community dinners and that kind of stuff that might be going on in a community. And in Leadville, there's community lunches that were put on 4 times a week. And they would, the director of the community lunch said that their goal for these lunches was to, here comes my favorite quote from the whole journey, their goal for these lunches was to, quote, "confuse who is giving and who is receiving," unquote. Confuse who is giving and who is receiving. And so they did this with direct intention. They made sure people from all walks of life were involved in preparing the meals. And if they thought a segment was missing, like they shared with me that the Hispanic element was missing, and that's a fairly big presence in Leadville, they went right out and made sure that people from that community was involved in preparing the meals. And with direct intention, they made sure people from all walks of life came to eat the meals. So it wasn't, people that, say, needed a good lunch here and there. The mayor came regularly to eat at these lunches. The college faculty that was in town came regularly. Students came, but they're probably more on the needy side than the So you had people from all walks of life preparing the meals, and you had people from all walks of life eating the meals. And there was one other stipulation, and that is, if you prepared the meals, then you had to sit down and eat the meals with the people who came to eat the meals. So with those 3 stipulations, they were very well achieving their goal of, quote, confuse who is receiving, who is giving and who is receiving, unquote. Well, there's another story I'd like to share of perhaps in a sense, the biggest success story. And it's about a church, but the story goes beyond, it's not a church message when you hear how, what made this church successful. It was in Sinking Springs, Ohio. And it was a Methodist church, and like most denominational churches across the country, it wasn't faring very well. And it was a common sight for us to see, a church of 18 members. And that's what the Sinking Spring membership was at one point anyways. And it was a town of 200, so, maybe you shouldn't expect that much more anyways. But they got a new pastor in town, or I should say it was always the pastor in town, and with churches being hurting here and there. They have ordained pastors, but they also have something called supply pastors. People that aren't ordained through the whole ministry business, but they're given what training they need to just, work with whatever community that they're from. So Pastor Greg Seaman, he worked full-time, I think, for GE. And so this pastor gig was just something he did on the side. But nonetheless, he was pretty serious about it, and he tried his darndest to increase membership. And he played guitar and he played special services in the evening for to get the youth involved and that kind of stuff. And lo and behold, not too long, I guess, the membership went up to 35. Hey, it doubled, That's great, isn't it? He didn't think so. And he was kicking himself. He was going, what is wrong with my ministry? What is wrong with my ministry? And then he stopped, and a light bulb went on, and he goes, well, wait a second, isn't this all our ministry? And I will have to say this, the church had one thing that was really going for it, and that is they only had one mission statement. I mean, I've seen churches with like 9 mission statements. And I kind of think that might not be doing them a favor. But, I'm not here to talk about churches, really. This church had one mission statement, and it was that we are called to serve others. And if this isn't my ministry, if this is our ministry, this is how are we all called to serve others. So he said, all right, anything goes. If you have an idea about how to serve others, I want to hear about it. And we're going to do something about it. I don't care what it is. And so he talked about, and he shared the story of a hairdresser coming in and saying, I really would like to give free haircuts. And Greg had to, he said, I had to hold my mouth, Hey, there's hungry out there, there's homeless out there, and you want to give free haircuts? But, no. All right, anything goes. However you want to serve others, all right, anything goes. Well, it turns out that they offered these free haircuts before school started, and there was so much demand for it, they had to call in another hairdresser, and then they had to give out coupons for it as well for people to come back. And the testimonies they got stories like, oh, this was such a blessing because we don't have enough money for Sally to get her haircut for senior pictures. So this was just so great for us. This was so needed. And it turns out that, you never know what a person really needs. And you never know what will really go over. But one thing you can know is that kindness works. And I'll tell you how you can know that. Because this church went up for membership. In a town of 200, they went up to 175. Because everyone wanted to get in on the action of being able to do what they thought could serve others. I've got like 30 stories, but I think at this point, it's such a, a 1 year, 5,000-mile journey involves so much that I could either just, we could camp here tonight, and I can go through it all, or at some point I just should stop telling stories and let you ask some questions. I mean, if you don't ask any, believe me, I can fill in. I'll tell some more stories, but does anyone have any questions they want to ask about a 5,000-mile walk across the country? Yep.
What got you through the tough days? I did a cross-country bike trip, and I had some days that were like, I want to go home, like right now, put me on a plane. But I did it for cancer, and I thought about like my best friend's mom and my godmother and my grandma, like, and that like made me go through like the rain and the hills and the bad temperaments. So what gets you through like the longer days?
Well, one thing to keep in mind, this is when we were young, like 5 or 10 years ago. We did a lot of this. And so on this particular journey, the shortest answer to that is, well, because we know what's expected, we know what it's all about, because we've done it so much. I mean, between the two of us, we've backpacked over 30,000 miles. So we know what it's all about. But I guess a better answer is when I first did this, what got me through it. And I was taking it on as, I hiked the Appalachian Trail in 1975, back when I was 3 years old. And I did it for a challenge. Man, I want to see what my limitations are, capable, what have you. So I assumed the absolute worst about it. And then I went, and it was a blast. And in the end, what it became was a way of life. And I think that's what, in almost any successful journey, you have to treat it almost like a way of life. You know, in a way of life, it's not all roses, right? You know, I mean, you've got your good days, you've got your bad days in any kind of way of life that you choose. But there's, in a way of life involves a purpose. And it involves short-term living. So if you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, you don't think about Mount Katahdin, you just think about the next. And I'm sure that's exactly what you ended up doing. You didn't think about the end of the bike trip. You thought about where you're going to that day, or the mountain that you had to get across, or the next dinner, right? The next, yeah, it's very, very important. The next dinner. So, you know, I think that's when you got a way of, you settle into a way of life that you know is just you. Then you can break that into all those short-term little goals that get you through that way of life. You don't think about the big picture too much. You may have a big picture in mind, but your focus isn't on the big picture, but on the little things along the way. Other questions? Yeah?
So how much did you average a day, or did you have a goal, or did you just go to you wanted to eat Jim's dinner?
Well, this was a year-long hike, so there's two different answers to this. And it doesn't depend on terrain. It depends on daylight. So in the summer, our usual day was like 20 miles. And in the winter, our usual day was like 14 miles, because there's just a lot less daylight in the winter. Even though in the winter, we're going across like Kansas, Missouri, you know, we're crossing the flatlands in the winter, but there's just not much daylight, so we slowed way down for that. Yeah.
So with 30,000 miles between you, you obviously get really good at carrying only what you need between the two of you. What did you miss? What did you find that you missed?
Well, I'm going to disappoint you here. Once again, the first time I hiked was in 1975, and when I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, that was 1977. And I remember it was on that hike, I hiked it with 3 other guys. We developed a motto while hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, and that is, weight is no object. Times have changed, but it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, and my pack is generally probably a lot heavier than, well, I know we hiked the Pacific Crest Trail last year, because, you know, I had the audacity to hike it before I met Cindy. And, you know, it was just, you know, she just wouldn't get off my back, you know. So we had to go out and hike the Pacific Crest Trail with our daughter. That was a beautiful thing. And our packs tended to be a bit heavier than the other people out there. So I'm a bad person to ask about that. Virtually, I don't leave anything that I don't want, especially if it's food. But I think in terms of, I think there's a compromise. I mean, I certainly see why you would pack light. But I also see why you would bring stuff that you need. And I actually think that, I would tend towards not having seen, and actually, I love backpacking so much, I've done it all. I've actually gone ultralight. You know, I've tried it. John Muir was my hero. So I've gone out for like 11 days with just like a little knapsack. So I've done as ultralight as you can imagine. And I've had a 100-pound pack before for an 18-day stretch. So I've done all things in between. And in my opinion, which, you know, my first opinion is everyone's different. So you have to do what's and back in the 70s, unfortunately, the brainwashing was that you need to go as heavy as possible. You were a real man if you carried a big pack. But now I say the brainwashing is actually in the other direction, that people sometimes are carrying much less than what they should be carrying. Everyone is different. You have to go with your own. And it depends also whether you're doing it as a sport or as a way of life, too. Now, I think more and more people are doing it as a sport. So, you know, they're carrying a 25-pound pack and they're doing 30 to 35-mile days. And I think that's fine. I mean, once again, I've done all things. I've done it as a sport before myself. But, you know, they're in the wilderness for a shorter period of time that way. They're going from town to town, and they're getting from one town to the other town as quickly as possible. And they can do that because they're carrying such light weight. Whereas, you know, from the same stretch, it might take us, back on the Pacific Crest Trail back in '77, it might take us 7 days, what people are doing in 3 days. So it kind of feeds upon itself. We're doing it as a way of life. We want to be out there. We want to stay out there. So it didn't matter that, you know, our packs were slowing us down. That was probably too long an answer for that.
I didn't notice a guitar though.
No. And, you know, I've had good intentions. I actually got a Martin backpacker guitar for this hike right here, American Discovery Trail. And we had support. We actually had support for the American Discovery Trail. So when we were in the wilderness, we packed for as much as 7 days. But when we were in Kansas, we were only carrying a day pack because we were out of town every single day. And we had support that met us every single day. So that guitar, that Martin backpacker guitar that I thought was going to be strapped to my back, just ended up staying in the support vehicle. I've yet to do it. It's an ambition of mine, though. Someday I'll actually hike with a guitar on my back. The Pete Seeger look. I'm not sure when that'll happen. Yeah?
What were your favorite camping sites?
The favorite camping, you saw a couple of slides of the favorite camping sites. Let's see, where are we right now? Welcome to, we've gone by some of my favorites. One was in Nevada when we were up on a mountain pass. So we're at 11,000 feet, and you know, you think of Nevada as, you know, flat desert, and a lot of it is flat desert, and a lot of what we hiked on was flat desert. But, you know, in the middle, there's mountain ranges that goes over. There's Mount Jefferson, and we're up on the pass of Mount Jefferson. That was just a really beautiful campsite. And then I can think of a canyon, in not Capitol Reef National Park, but an area just west of Capitol Reef National Park in Utah. We were in this canyon it was like an oasis. You know, most of Utah is just dry, very dry. It's either dry gray or dry red, one or the other, but just moonscapes out there in Utah. And I would say that on the journey, that was the most, we're mountain people, but that was the most spectacular landscapes for us, going across those moonscapes, whether they were gray or red. But there was a little creek, and in all this mass of just red rock, we were in this little canyon with that was more or less an oasis of green grass and trees and a little stream going through. On the side, you could see all the red rock in the distance and what have you, but we were in a little oasis, so that was kind of a special campsite. Yeah?
I study osteoarthritis, so the loss of cartilage within the knee specifically. There's a presumption that I think is unfounded. I won't bore you with the nerdy science details why. That eventually, if you use it too much, you'll wear it out. So if you take too many steps too often, your knees get bad. I was wondering if over all of this walking, have you noticed not just knee pain, but any sort of detrimental musculoskeletal condition?
Well, right now I have a problem with my arm from throwing a snowball at a woodpecker, but Norfolk, Connecticut, it's a little snowy up there. Anyways, no, my knees feel better right now than they did in the 20s and 30s. And I'll say there's a few reasons for that. One, I'm not quite as crazy as I was in my 20s and 30s because I would run down hills with a pack on, which perhaps wasn't the wisest thing to do. And you know, I'm not here to. And I know the research on this is mixed, but glucosamine has really seemed to help me. I'm not here to recommend that because I've looked at the research and it looks mixed, but I've got some convincing testimony of what, because I'm a scientist, bred and trained, and I think it really does work, at least for me. What do you think of glucosamine?
I don't know much about it.
All right. Okay. Well, it's supposed to lubricate your joints a little bit. One thing that also I think helps now is, since we've been on our most recent journey, I'm very much in tune to diet. And for the sake of brain health, I'm very much in tune to anti-inflammatory diet. But really, that has to do with all kinds of things, including joints, and anti-inflammatory diet. So, but yeah, my knees are holding up real well right now. I got to do something about my arm, but my knees are really doing well right now. Yeah.
I hiked with an artificial hip for 21 years and have had no real difficulty with it at all. And that's mountain climbing the Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail, and my sort of favorite trails. So don't be afraid of it if you get to the right doctor that does it and says. I'm very careful with what doctor I choose as a woman so that they don't think we're weak and unable and never, I don't want them to say, just because you have something in your heart, but all right, so you lose 10 pounds and then you can hike. But I have a question of, throughout the United States, for those who were the hikers, did you notice any real difference between those who cared and those who did not throughout the United States? Like, was there some groups that seemed to care so much more than other groups?
No, not really. I would say it's more situational. I'm glad you asked that. I do have a couple of reflections on that, since I was all about kindness and what have you. First of all, if we were in the backcountry, one day in Nevada, I called Trail Angel Day because the whole day, it was a 4th of July weekend, so there were more people in the backcountry anyways. And there was a heat wave coming through on the 4th of July, and here we are, we weren't day packing, we had our heavy packs in the stretch. And I think I was sort of getting over an intestinal thing, so I looked pretty pathetic. Anyway, so the whole day, people were stopping, all day, 8 times, but the backcountry in Nevada, 8 people stopping for you, that's a pretty big number, all right? So, people stopping to get us soda, water. One guy gave me a $20 bill. Hey, you look like you need this, pal. Just all day long, okay? Now, I'll contrast that with Kansas. No one ever stopped in Kansas, even though Kansas was reportedly, the friendliest state. Lots of hikers say that. And it was the friendliest state, I wouldn't say the friendliest. It was like every other state. When you got into a town and you were conversing with people, what have you. But in Kansas, we're not in backcountry. We're not on ATV roads or something like that. We're walking on paved roads or dirt roads following the Arkansas River. Or if you're in Kansas, it's called the Arkansas River. So what's the difference there? If people are in the backcountry, they're not in a hurry. If people are driving on a road or they're driving in even on a dirt road, they don't have time to stop. So I think that was a more pertinent factor. I do think there is a difference. There wasn't a difference in how we got treated. And there wasn't a difference, and people were doing things for their communities all across the country. I will say this, there is a difference in how people perceive themselves. Kansas think they're pretty good to people. They think they're pretty hospitable in Kansas. Whereas in West Virginia, it actually happened in New Jersey too, but I remember the irony, we're walking along and a guy calls us, he's interested in what we're doing, calls us over. So, he's being as hospitable as anywhere else in the country, but, we're talking as he's pouring, filling our water bottles up again, he's talking about, how bad people are. The irony in that, but I do think there's more of a perception that we're not so great in the East than out West or Midwest, even though kindness resides within all over the place. But I think and I haven't done a research project on this, but I've got a lot of experiential observations to go on. I think we're more hurried in the East. and living a more hurried lifestyle, we're less open to the social aspects of humanity, and being less open to the social aspects of humanity, we acquire a more negative view of humanity than elsewhere. Yeah?
Did that translate to an observation on your part that people in the West are happier than people in the East?
No, I can't say that. I came up with that. No, but you know, I wouldn't be in a position to really gauge that, because in the conditions that we end up seeing people, they're more relaxed. You know, they're more, you know, they're not in there. You know, so like once again, that guy that was filling up our water bottle, he may have thought that people aren't hospitable, but he was being hospitable because he was in a situation where he would be. So I didn't really notice that. But if I, you know, observed someone for 24 hours, maybe I would have, I don't know. Yeah?
Would you please repeat the questions?
Oh, okay. Because I can speak into the mic. All right. The question that I just answered there was that I noticed that people were happier out west than out east, and I didn't notice that. Yeah?
So you talk about this as being a way of life, and I'm curious because I'm inspired by people who do these, you know, long journeys, whether it's hiking or a around the world trip or something. But I'm always interested to know, how do you kind of make the space in your life for that? Because obviously a lot of us have jobs and that we don't have enough flexibility to go off. You know, what does it take in terms of funding, in terms of you rent your house out? You know, how do you plan for it and kind of make it work in terms of the rest of your life?
The question has to do with how can you do this as a way of life when, you know, ways of life involve money. That summed it up good enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Well, let me first say that we never were a couple of, we've done this, you know, throughout our lives, and perhaps because of that and other reasons, we've never been a couple with much means to us. And had we been, we probably never could do this. It would be, as ironic as this sounds, it would be a lot tougher for wealthy people with wealthy backgrounds to do this than not so wealthy, because they have to give up more. We don't have to give up hardly anything to do this. We were able to do the American Discovery Trail. You know, granted, we have a house, and one of our daughters lived in the house and took care of the house while we were gone. And it was her, you know, the bills were her problem while we were gone, the bills for the house. So that's how that worked. But, you know, in terms of loss of income, well, what income? So, you know, we weren't really losing much income doing it. And I think that's where it's a real deterrent for people. You go do this, and, you know, you're making, you know, so much a month or a year or what have you, and if you have to give all that up, you know, that's a pretty big deterrent. Yeah.
And the flyer for this presentation, it talked about Cindy and early onset Alzheimer. So like, how did the hiking and her Alzheimer's work?
I would rather answer those questions maybe one-on-one at some other time in a smaller forum or something. I'd rather get into that some other way. Yeah?
So which did you prefer, the short hikes or the longer, really long journeys?
The most amazing journey was the American Discovery Trail, the year-long journey, and it was because of discovering all aspects of America. Actually, now that I think about it, the one thing I wanted to mention to your question, one thing we noticed at the start of the American Discovery Trail, Cindy had trouble. Well, Cindy couldn't help me set up a tent. By the end of the American Discovery Trail, Cindy would set up the tent by herself. And there's other evidence as well. That at mild stages, there's a lot that quality of life factors can do to reverse symptoms. And there was a lot. Cindy kept reporting all through the hike how she was getting better. and there's pretty good evidence of that. And the question, well, no, I don't want to repeat the question, actually. What was your question again? I'm sorry.
About the long or short.
Yeah, because the trail is so well named, American Discovery Trail. And we just discovered so much, all the different landscapes. I mean, we'd never hiked in the desert. Well, actually, I had. We hadn't hiked in the desert much before, and here we are hiking in the Utah, Nevada desert in July and August, which, you know, you might question our sanity. I remember I remember a DOT worker came up and wanted to know, because we were hiking on a road at the time, wanted to know if we were okay. And I said, yeah, we're doing fine. She goes, well, the temperature near the road is 132 degrees. But we learned how to hike completely different in that situation. So we learned something new about ourselves and how to hike a way we'd never hiked before. It was, you know, usually your destination hiking. You know, you're going to the next stream, you're going to the next mountain, or what have you. We forgot all that. We were interval hiking. So we would hike for 2 miles, break for 5 minutes, drink just a tiny bit, eat just a tiny bit. But we're doing that every 2 miles and for 5 minutes every 2 miles. And that was what enabled us to do it. I mean, early on, when it was only 90 degrees, we actually had a little flirtation with heat exhaustion. But we were getting in condition for it and what have you. But now, by the time of the Utah desert, which was even hotter, and we knew what to do, we were able to handle it. But you discover all kinds of culture across, you know, from the cowboys to the Amish. You discover we were on all kinds of pathways on American Discovery Trail. So we're on wilderness trail, bike path, county roads, state roads, all kinds of, and we were on cities. You know, we hiked through San Francisco, we hiked through Denver, we hiked through Cincinnati, what have you. We hiked through all kinds of things. And we hiked through farmland, a lot of farmland. We hiked through small towns. Just, we got to see all of America, and for that reason, I think it's been my favorite journey of all. Yep.
Last question.
Okay, last question.
This question is out of, physical activity. Did you write the music or did you just play instantaneously?
It's my composition. It's one of 5 movements, all about discovering. So the first movement's discovering beauty. The second movement's discovering culture. The third movement is discovering the joy of life. Fourth movement is discovering kindness and community, and the fifth movement is self-discovery, pilgrimage. And there's a person on my street, current Kim Scharnberg, who's actually a renowned orchestrator, composer, and he's going to serve as my graduate graduate thesis advisor. He'll help pull it all together towards the end, but I'm the one developing the themes for it.
The music sounds beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
It seems to fit to the picture.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's a little give and take on that. You know, I come up with the themes. I know what I want to show. So that leads to what kind of music I want to compose. But then as I compose the music, I think, well, let's show these slides. And that kind of, so it kind of goes back and forth a little bit.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Nice. So everyone is welcome to join us in the Phrygian Lounge. We have a light lunch there. So please join us at the Phrygian Lounge, which is one level up towards the Dean's Suite. We'll be there, Kirk will be there, and he'll be able to talk to you in more detail if you have other questions as well. Thank you very much.